It had been ages since I'd sat at a desk like this. The lamp was dim, but I didn't mind. After 3 years in the dark, a little dimness was nothing. "Whenever you're ready," Mr. Johnson said from across the desk, pen hovering over his notebook. Time to tell my story. It felt weird to be ready after all this time, but I nodded. Where to even begin? 3 years ago, I went hiking in the woods up north. I started. People never understood why I wanted to go alone, but that was the whole point. Being alone was the only point. Johnson scribbled that down. The scratching of his pen was loud in the quiet room. Rain lashed against the windows, taking me back to that morning when everything was still normal. I had my whole trip planned out. I was always a planner, still am, I guess. Ironic. "What made you choose northern Sweden?" the detective asked. "It was remote," I said. "Just a big blank space on the map. A few lakes, some rivers, but no roads, no towns." I looked him right in the eye. "To someone who hates people, it's paradise." I parked my car at the trailhead, double-checked my gear. It was heavy, but I was used to it. "That emergency beacon," the detective said, making a note. "You pressed it when?" "In a minute," I replied. I needed to do this right. I remembered stepping onto that trail. It was everything I'd imagined. Fresh air, total peace. "You said in your earlier testimony you didn't see anyone that first day." "No one." "That was the whole idea," I said. "Early September. After the summer hikers, before the first snow. No tourists, no hunters. Just me." I took a sip of water. That first day was perfect, just like I'd pictured. The trail was an easy climb, old-growth forest. I kept a good pace, only stopping to check the map or take in the view. By mid-afternoon, I'd hiked 20 kilometers and reached the creek where I planned to camp. "Still alone?" the detective asked. "Yep, all alone." Pitched my tent, cooked a simple meal, watched the sunset paint the sky with colors you never see in the city. I thought, wow, this is it. This is what I was looking for. No texts, no emails, no people. Just peace and quiet. I clasped my hands together. They were shaking. I knew it was too good to be true. How was the next morning different? I packed up early, like before. Wanted to cover ground before it got too hot. But the trail got tougher. Steeper climbs, switchbacks. The trees got weirder, older, gnarled. The spaces between them felt wider. I paused. Around noon, I heard something strange. What kind of sound? A scream. Maybe. Or maybe not. Maybe an animal, a bird. But it made me stop. It felt like a cry for help, like something was wrong. He stopped writing and looked up. "What did you do?" "What I always do when I see something I don't like." I pretended I didn't. Convinced myself I was imagining things. I chuckled. I should have just kept walking, but I couldn't. I heard it again, closer this time. And there was a new sound now, the sound of running, of bushes being trampled. It was coming towards me. The detective looked up from his notebook. "This is when you met Lisa." I nodded. I didn't know who or what it was. I just stood there, listening. Then I heard a loud bang from somewhere in the building. I flinched, and then she came bursting onto the path, maybe 50 feet away. Clothes ripped, covered in blood and dirt, running like she was being chased. And when she saw me, she shouted, "Help me." "Oh God, help me." I stopped. The detective waited. He knew this was the important part. That's when I had to make a choice. I said quietly, Every instinct in my body screamed at me to turn around. Run away, don't get involved. But you didn't. No. I whispered. I didn't. And that's when the real nightmare began. The detective leaned forward. Can you tell me about the dream, Mr. Johnson? I heard a low rumble of thunder and jumped. That sound will forever remind me of that day. The day everything went wrong. Maybe we should take a break, I said. Before I go on, I need to be calm to explain this properly. He turned off the recorder and nodded. But he wasn't satisfied. He knew this wasn't the real story. This was just the beginning. We took a 15-minute break. I drank 2 cups of coffee, trying to calm my nerves. Then I sat back down across from the detective. I locked up my car, put on my backpack, and started walking, I said. It was still raining a bit, but it wasn't supposed to last. I checked my map. I paused, the memory vivid. A sudden, violent storm hit while I was on an exposed ridge. I had to scramble down into the valley for cover. It rained for hours, the thunder deafening, the trail turning into a mudslide. When it finally stopped, it was already afternoon. I could hear a creek to the east. Hoping it was the one on my map, I started heading that way. The water was freezing, the rocks slippery. I had to be careful not to fall. A couple of times I had to stop and think about which way to go. Just like in real life, the girl screamed again, and I moved towards the sound, even though I knew I shouldn't. I saw a flash of blue up ahead, and then I saw her, hiding behind a huge tree trunk, terrified. Her hair was matted with blood, her clothes torn and filthy. "Don't come any closer," she shouted. She was shaking, out of breath. "I'm not going to hurt you," I said, raising my hands. It felt stupid. "I heard you screaming. Are you hurt?" She looked over my shoulder, back into the forest. "They might be following me. We have to..." "Who is Wu?" I asked, even though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. "The men," she said, hugging herself. "They took us. My family. 2 weeks ago." She was gasping between sobs. "From the bunker. Underground. What's your name?" "Lisa. Lisa Jensen." She looked at me then, really looked at me, and something in her eyes just broke. "God, you're real. You're actually real." That sent a chill down my spine. "My name is Johann. I have a first aid kit. Can I help you?" She nodded, but her legs buckled, and she collapsed. I lunged forward and caught her before she hit the ground. It felt strange touching someone after all this time. "Whoa. Whoa, I got you," I said, lowering her onto a fallen tree trunk. She laughed, a hollow, broken sound. "Safe. None of us are safe. You don't understand." "Then help me understand," I said, grabbing my backpack. I found the first aid kit and started cleaning a nasty cut on her forehead. She kept talking. "Hiking trip with her family, parents, younger brother. They were all taken. Men in black. Underground facility. They split us up," she said, wincing as I dabbed at the cut. "Different rooms. I could hear. Sometimes I could hear the others screaming." I put a butterfly bandage on the cut, trying to keep my hands from shaking. "What did they want?" "I don't know. They never said. They just watched, took notes, talked about subjects and trials." She suddenly grabbed my wrist, her fingers digging in. "My brother, Tommy. He's still there. They're all still there." I pulled my hand away. "We need to call for help. I have a distress beacon." "No," she shouted, her voice cracking. "No cops. They can tell. They always know. If someone comes for them, they'll relocate them. Or... She couldn't finish the sentence. Part of me wanted to activate the beacon anyway, but the look on her face stopped me. "Where is this facility?" I asked, even though I knew I shouldn't. She pointed northeast, about 3 kilometers that way. There's a ridge with 3 peaks. The cave is in the rock face below. I closed the first aid kit. I didn't know what to do. I should just activate the beacon and let the authorities handle this. "Please," she said, sensing my hesitation. "If we don't hurry, they'll be dead," she said. I suddenly realized who she was. She was like me. No, she was me, but she had been through more than I could imagine. "I'm not," I started, then stopped. "Not a hero. Not brave. Not..." There was a noise in the distance like an engine. Lisa's eyes widened. "They know I'm missing. They're activating the perimeter defenses." I wasn't doing this out of bravery or selflessness. I was doing it because I didn't have a choice. "Describe the layout of the place," I said. "Every single room." As she talked about tunnels and security measures, I felt my plans slipping away. The darkness of the forest felt like an ominous presence. This wasn't my story anymore. It hadn't been since I heard that scream. I was just a character in someone else's story, and the only way out was to go deeper in. There was no turning back now. Thunder rumbled in the distance. A storm was coming. I had a feeling it wouldn't be the only one. The storm was closing in fast. We had to get to the facility before it broke. "How long until they come looking?" I asked. "Minutes, maybe less," Lisa said, struggling to her feet. "They'll send the drones first." Drones. I couldn't help but repeat the word. It felt so out of place here, like a smartphone in a medieval castle. "Little ones. Quiet. They pick up heat signatures." I glanced upwards, realizing how exposed we were. Maybe the storm would help. "Rain blocks infrared," I said. We followed a game trail, moving as quickly as Lisa could manage. "How did you get out?" I asked during one of our short breaks. "Power flicker," she said, her voice flat. "The locks released for about 30 seconds. I just got out, without thinking, without looking back. It started to rain. I pulled my jacket out of my backpack and put it around Lisa's shoulders. "Let's find somewhere to hole up," I said. "Somewhere to regroup and figure out what we're doing." She shook her head. "No time. They're coming. There's no way you're getting anywhere on foot." "We have to." I heard a mechanical whine getting closer. "Jet down." Lisa hissed. We ducked into the bushes. The noise passed overhead, a shadow barely visible through the trees. My heart pounded so hard, I was worried its infrared signature would give us away. "They're going in a grid," Lisa whispered. "We have about 5 minutes until it swings back." "There's a ravine about half a kilometer east," I said. "It might help us hide our body heat." We picked up the pace. The rain was helping now, covering our tracks and muffling our sounds. But it also made the terrain treacherous. Every step was a risk. Lisa slipped on a wet rock and almost went down. "I'm fine," she said, preempting my question. "Just need a second." I heard the drone again, closer this time. We wouldn't make it to the ravine. "Where else can we go?" I looked around for a place to hide. I tried to think like an animal. Finally, I spotted a fallen tree with a massive, upturned root system. "This way," I said, helping Lisa up. We squeezed in underneath the roots and waited as the drone hovered above us for a terrifying moment, then moved on. Hey, hey. Hey, I said. Breathe. In through your nose, out through your mouth. She nodded, trying to keep still. Her body was shaking against mine. We waited for what felt like an eternity. The sound of the rain drumming on the leaves. After a while, the drone noise disappeared completely. They'll be sending in ground teams next, Lisa said. How many people? 3 teams of 4. They usually go in different directions. I thought about this, strategizing like it was a game. But games don't smell like mud and terror. We go after dark, I said. Cover of night, cover of rain. Lisa made a noise that might have been a laugh. They have night vision, thermal scopes. But they're still just men, I said. Men who get tired. Men who mess up. Especially in these conditions. There was a long pause. Then she said, Why are you helping me? Why did you come back? I countered. Because you asked, she whispered. It always is. That's what they count on. People walking away, looking the other way. A thunderclap boomed above us. I saw the fear in her eyes and realized she was just as afraid as I was. Get some sleep, I told her. I'll keep watch. She didn't answer, but I could feel her relax against the wall of dirt. I listened to her breathe until she fell asleep. I kept watch as the rain dripped from the roots. I thought about what we had: a backpack with some food, a knife, a medical kit. And what they had: a small army with weapons and technology I didn't even want to imagine. We didn't stand a chance. But then again, none of that mattered. It hadn't mattered for a long time. The rain continued to fall. In the distance, I heard footsteps. But for now, we were safe. Tomorrow would be a different story. I checked my watch. 6:42 p.m. Night was coming. So was our next move. The night was long and tense. I forced myself to stay awake, checking my watch every few minutes as the rain slowly subsided. By the time dawn broke, my body ached from sitting still, and I was freezing. The forest was still dark, but the nighttime sounds faded, replaced by birdsong and rustling leaves. Lisa was still asleep, exhausted. I checked my watch again. 5:37 a.m. I didn't want to wake her, but I needed to scout ahead. I crawled out from under the roots. The weather had cleared slightly, but a heavy mist limited visibility. Good. I'll be back soon, I whispered to Lisa, though she couldn't hear me. I tried to retrace my steps, heading back towards the road. I knew this forest well, but it felt different now, disorienting. I left markers to help me find my way back. A snapping twig made me freeze. I didn't hear anything else, but I felt eyes on me. You're being paranoid, I told myself, pushing on. I reached a section where I expected to find the ravine, but it wasn't there. The landscape was wrong. I heard a bird call behind me, turned, but saw nothing. Come on, Johann, I muttered, pulling out my compass. The needle spun wildly, pointing in every direction but north. I smacked it a few times, but it didn't budge. My skin prickled with the feeling of being watched. I looked for cameras, drones, anything, but found nothing. Then I heard it, a soft rustling, like clothes brushing against bark. It seemed to be coming from all around me. Hello, I called out, instantly regretting it. The sound echoed back, distorted, alien. I tried to retrace my steps, but my markers made no sense. The twigs were pointing in different directions, the stones scattered. It took me almost an hour to find my way back to the fallen tree. Lisa was awake, sitting against the wall of our makeshift shelter, staring into the mist. "They're coming," she said before I could even speak. Her voice was flat, empty. "Who?" I asked. "The search parties." She shook her head. "Not them, you fool. The others. The ones they don't talk about. The ones they're really studying." I knelt beside her. "Lisa, you need to calm down. There are no others." "You know, don't you?" she said, staring right through me. "I can tell by the look on your face. The eyes. The wrong way. The noises." I shivered. Part of me wanted to dismiss it as paranoia, but I remembered my own disorientation during my scout. "We should go," I said. "The ravine isn't there anymore." "Or it is," she finished, "but not where it's supposed to be. Nothing's where it's supposed to be out here. That's what they're studying. That's why they brought us here." My logical mind rebelled, but another part of me knew she was right. "Studying what?" "The borders," she said. "The places where things leak. Where the things that should be aren't, and the things that shouldn't be are." We heard the three-note bird call again, closer now. "Not a bird," she said. "Not a bird. We need to get the hell out of here." "I don't know what's happening," I said, "but we can't stay here." She laughed, a chilling, hollow sound. "It doesn't matter if you leave. The roads don't go where they're supposed to. They bring you back to them. It's like a spider web." I looked outside. The fog was thicker now, and I saw shapes moving in it, tall, unnatural shapes. I felt the compass in my pocket. "Then we don't take the paths," I said. "We go off trail." Lisa clutched my arm. "They'll find us. They always do." "Who? Who? The search parties? Or the other ones?" "Both." "Neither." "I don't know. It all feels the same out here." I heard the rustling again, closer. My heart started to race. "Damn it. We have to do something," I said. "We either stay or we go, and I'm not sitting here waiting for whatever that is to come get us." She looked up at me, and something in her expression changed. "You still have hope that you can leave," she said. "That's why they allow you to try. For the same reason they want to see you learn." "Learn what?" The bird call came again, then another and another, surrounding us. Lisa smiled, and that was the most terrifying thing yet. "We're already caught," she said. We always were. The running, the hiding. It's all part of their test. Their study. Their game. I heard more of them all around us." "I don't like that," I said, picking up my bag. "Let's go. We're leaving." She didn't protest, but she didn't stop smiling either. She knew something I didn't, and I had a feeling I wasn't going to like it. We stepped out of the shelter and into the forest. The compass spun uselessly. The paths led us in circles, but I clung to my plan. "Which way?" Lisa asked, her voice almost cheerful. I scanned the trees, searching for something familiar in this alien landscape. The trees were taller than I remembered, the bird calls too frequent. "We'll find our own way," I said. "We have to." We pressed on, deeper into whatever hell we had stumbled into. The rain continued to fall, but now it felt like every drop had a meaning, like the sky itself was watching. Hours passed. The forest grew more hostile. The rain intensified, then subsided, then turned into a downpour. As the sun began to set, we found a tight circle of trees and made camp, feeling more like we were hiding than resting. The rain stopped. and the silence was deafening. Lisa sat by the entrance of my tent. "Maybe you should get some rest," I said. She shook her head without looking at me. "Sleep is when they whisper loudest." I wanted to ask her who they were, but I was too tired. I fell asleep. Lisa's silhouette the last thing I saw as she continued to stare into the darkness. The sound of static woke me up. I opened my eyes to pitch black. "Do you hear it?" Lisa asked. She sounded scared. There was more static, and now voices, too. It was coming from my backpack. I don't. I fumbled for my headlamp and turned it on. It was strangely dim. "I don't have anything in here that makes that noise." She shook her head. "They'll find us. They always find us." I picked up the backpack. The static grew louder. I opened the main compartment and saw a small tape recorder sitting on top of my gear. I didn't. I started to say, but Lisa was already there beside me. "They have something to say to us," she whispered. The static resolved into voices, multiple voices speaking at once. Some in Swedish, some in English, others in languages I didn't recognize. Awareness levels higher than anticipated. Containment breach holding at 177%. Time dilation becoming erratic. I tried to turn it off, but it didn't work. "Make it stop," Lisa begged, covering her ears. "Please make it stop." I pulled the batteries out, but the voices continued. How? How is that possible?" I stammered, flipping the recorder over. There was a small metal box on the bottom, no bigger than a matchbox. It had a logo on it, a spiral that seemed to spin if I looked at it too long. "No!" Lisa yelled, slapping the recorder from my hands. It clattered to the tent floor, and the whispers stopped. The silence that followed was almost palpable. "What is that?" I asked, staring at the box. "A marker," Lisa said, fear in her voice. "They need them to help track the change." "Change in what?" She met my eyes. In real life. In the spaces between what should be and what is." The box started to hum, and the spiral glowed with an unnatural light. "Let's destroy it," I said, reaching for the recorder. "Wait." Lisa grabbed my arm. "If we move it, it only makes things worse. The changes happen more quickly." "Then what do we do?" I heard the 3-note call again, much closer this time. It was answered by another, then another, surrounding us. The humming from the box intensified, and I felt a strange sensation, like the tent was moving. "They're here," Lisa whispered, squeezing my wrist. "The people who leave the markers. The people who watch what comes next." Shadows moved outside the tent, shadows far too tall to be human. "And then what happens?" I asked, not sure I wanted to know. The same smile returned to her face. "The test," she repeated. "Your test. Like my family's test. Like everyone else's test." The tent around us started to dissolve, replaced by a dense, alien forest. The trees twisted and coiled, their branches reaching down like grasping claws. The box pulsed again, and the whispers returned, but now they were coming from everywhere. From the air, from my own thoughts. "This is the study," Lisa said, her voice merging with the whispers. "Subject Johan Nielsen. Commencing trial." I realized this was only the beginning of whatever test we had walked into. Or was it the test? I didn't even know anymore. The world blurred and spun. I felt like we were moving through time at lightning speed, or maybe slowing it down. When the dizziness passed, we were in a different part of the forest. The tent was gone. But the box was still there, sitting in a clearing, waiting for us. I felt another pulse from the box and picked it up. The logo looked familiar, like something I had seen before. "We have to bury it," Lisa said, panic in her voice. "Right now, before they trace it." "Trace it with what?" I turned the box over, looking for batteries, wires, anything that could explain how it worked. "This doesn't make any sense." "None of this makes any. Stop thinking about it." She pulled it from my hands. "That's what they want. They want you to think about it. They want you to look closer. They want you to see." The whispers were quieter now, but still there. "That symbol," I said slowly. "I've seen it before. I think in Stockholm, maybe." She looked at me with horror. "Don't do that. Don't make connections. That's how they get in. That's how they find the cracks." A branch snapped in the forest. We both went silent, listening. Then the bird call sounded again, further away but clearer. "Please," Lisa pleaded. "Just trust me." "Okay, we need to get rid of it." I nodded, even though it went against every instinct. We left the tent. The air outside felt thicker, more humid. Lisa led us to a spot beneath a large pine tree. The ground was soft here. She started to dig. "Deep," she said. "It needs to be deep." We dug a hole big enough to bury the box. It seemed to grow brighter as we dug, as if trying to escape. "Keep it down," Lisa said, "and make sure it doesn't move." I placed the box in the dirt. It almost seemed to fight back, the spiral flashing like a strobe light. "Lisa," I said, my voice shaking, "what if we're wrong?" She laughed, a broken, terrifying sound. "Wrong? We're all already wrong. This is about trying to make it right." We covered the box with leaves and dirt until it stopped glowing. Then we patted the earth down to make it look undisturbed. "Is this going to work?" I asked, but I wasn't even sure what I meant anymore. "Possibly. For a time." She knelt back, dusting off her hands. "Nothing lasts too long out here. The veil is thin." A thin layer of fog started to appear. "Lisa," I said, helping her to her feet, "we need to get back to the tent. Now." We arrived back in time to see the fog rolling in, tendrils snaking towards the tent. "They're looking," Lisa said. I checked the time. 3:37 a.m. "Why do I know that symbol?" I asked, desperate to grasp something real. She shook her head. No questions. Questions are bridges. They use them to cross over." "Cross over from what?" The fog outside grew heavier. The whispers were back. "From in between," she finally said. "From the places their research opened." Rifts. I wanted to argue, to tell her she was talking nonsense, but my brain couldn't process what was happening. It was like being forced to learn a new way of thinking, but by rote, without understanding. The sound from the buried box grew louder. The fog crept into the tent. "What the hell have we done?" I whispered, watching the shapes it formed. Lisa took my hand. Her fingers were ice cold. "What we were supposed to do," she said. "What we always do. We chose to do it, but we didn't have a choice." 3 hours crawled by. We drifted in and out of sleep, woken by whispering sounds and the feeling of fog patterns spreading across our skin. The flashlight grew weaker. It got colder. We could see our breath. We weren't truly awake, but we weren't asleep either. Then, after a timeless interval, we woke up for real. The whispering had changed. There was another sound outside, a low humming. For a second I thought it was another strange noise from the box, But then I saw Lisa's reaction. "No," she breathed. "They're coming. For real." The noise grew louder. It was the unmistakable thrum of rotor blades. "A helicopter." "We need to leave," I said, grabbing my bag. "We can't." Lisa's voice was monotone. "Once they send the birds, they don't fail." The helicopter's spotlight cast strange shadows on the tent walls. The voices from the buried box were still whispering. "Jet out," I said, pulling Lisa by the arm. The woods. We scrambled out of the tent just as the helicopter landed, its rotors churning the mist into a swirling vortex. The spotlight found us. "Get down." "Now." A voice boomed from a loudspeaker. Lisa collapsed to her knees. I moved to help her, but then I saw them, figures rappelling down from the helicopter. "Final warning," the voice said. "Get down or we will shoot." I wanted to obey. My mind screamed at me to listen. But then I remembered what Lisa had said. That's what they want. I pulled her to her feet, and we ran. We didn't get far before tear gas rained down on us. "Keep going." I cuffed, but Lisa went limp in my arms. I heard footsteps behind us. They were gaining. I tried to look back, but my eyes streamed with tears and pepper spray. "Target captured," a voice called out. Hands grabbed me, pulling me down. I fought back, but there were too many of them. I was thrown to the ground, a knee pressed into my back. The earth vibrated beneath me, that same low hum from the box. "Attention! Secondary anomaly identified." A voice crackled over a radio. "Sierra 7 profile confirmed." "Copy." Another voice responded. "Retrieve both subjects." The gas was overwhelming. My muscles weakened, my mind grew hazy. I saw Lisa being strapped to a stretcher. "Wait," I tried to say, but my tongue felt thick. "You don't understand. The box." "Sir." I'm reading multiple temporal distortions in the vicinity. A new voice said, "They're multiplying. Get them inside, now." Before the boundary, another voice trailed off, as if snatched away by the wind. "Move! Move!" the commander shouted. What were they afraid of? These trained soldiers with their weapons and equipment. They tied my hands and dragged me towards the helicopter. The rotors whipped the fog into a frenzy. The ground seemed to undulate like the ocean. I heard noises from the helicopter, unnatural noises. The last thing I saw before the gas knocked me out was Lisa's face. She was smiling at me, that same knowing grin. "The test," she said, but her voice was lost in the roar of the rotors. "It's just starting." Darkness swallowed me. Just before I lost consciousness, I heard the sound of reality tearing apart. That's the only way I can describe it. Like the fabric of the world was being ripped open. And then I was gone. I was still in the helicopter as the forest receded below. But as I faded in and out of awareness, I began to wonder if we were really leaving it behind, or if we were just going somewhere else, somewhere equally dangerous and cursed, somewhere they could continue their test.